Okay, welcome back to the Founders Table. This is where we sit down with leaders building America's backbone industries. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Vince Hafeli, President of Ajax Paving Industries of Florida. Shout out Florida. With over 40 years in construction and 4 decades of leadership experience, Vince has helped shape Florida's infrastructure while also becoming a recognized voice for employee well-being. I'm really excited to dive into his journey, Ajax impact, and the lessons he's learned through leading teams of hundreds in one of the country's toughest industries, in my opinion. So Vince, again, thank you for jumping on. The first question I really do have is kind of leading into like your career path. So you've had an incredible career spanning quality control, project management, and now president of Ajax Paving. What first drew you into the construction industry?
I don't know. I think a lot of us end up in places where we never envisioned we would be. Uh, I never had a vision of working in the asphalt industry. Um, I wanted to be an architect.
Okay.
And so for 4 years in high school, I took drafting and drawing every year. And actually my senior year, I designed a house. The following year, the shop class that the high school built over the course of a few years. So I wanted to be an architect. And then when I started taking architectural classes in college, I quickly learned that I probably wasn't as creative as I thought I was. So if I couldn't design them, I thought, well, maybe I can build them. And I started college in August of 1980.
Okay.
And it took me 16 years to get my bachelor's degree. So that was a long journey. And through there, I changed majors. I was going to be in marketing. I was going to be in engineering. I was going to be a civil engineering technician. Um, I just took some, I took some classes at Daytona Beach Community College at the time, and a professor, Dr. Harold Johnston, that used to be with the Corps of Engineers out of Louisiana. There was an ad in the newspaper, in the Ormond Beach newspaper, and they were looking for a laboratory technician with experience to break concrete test cylinders, and he brought it into the class, and he told us we ought to go apply for the job. And I told him, well, I would apply for it, but I don't have any experience. And he said, well, you do. And I said, well, no, I don't. And he said, hey, we made a concrete cylinder in this lab and we broke it. So you've got experience. Go there and sell yourself. And I went there and got the job. That's where I started. 2 hours a day, $4.50 an hour, making $45 a week, breaking concrete test cylinders. So
Holy cow.
that was my break. That was my foot in the door.
Holy cow. That is definitely an interesting journey. You really kind of went with the flow of everything. And I think that's great, to be honest, because I think a lot of people too feel like they need to have a master plan, and it shows that you could find, sometimes you just have to go with the motion of stuff, and as long as you stay consistent with a lot of things, you'll obviously be successful. Looking back, was there a defining moment that made you want to step into like executive leadership and eventually take on the role of president?
Well, I've always enjoyed the people in this industry, maybe than I enjoy the industry. And when I started as that part-time engineering technician in a lab, and a month later, they promoted me to a full-time position. And about 2 years later, I had an opportunity to become a lab manager there. So that was kind of my first experience of managing anything. A year later, then I became the assistant branch manager. So I kind of had these steps along the way. And I worked for geotechnical engineering firms from 1985 to 2002. And I worked for the Florida Department of Transportation in there for a couple of years, but in the project management, so it's still kind of the same field.
Mm-hmm.
And I came to Ajax in October of 2002 as their quality control manager. And in June of 2003, I walked in to the president's office, the guy that now owns the company. And I told him, I said, hey, whenever you're ready to step down from being president, just so you know, I want to run the company. So I would tell people, be careful what you say or wish for, because sometimes it might come true.
Sometimes it comes true.
And so in '04, I became the general manager of Ajax, and in '07, I became the vice president. And then in about 13, he told me, hey, I want you to do a self-review. Do your self-review and we'll get together and talk about it. And part of that review that I put together was a transition plan for me taking over his spot in the company.
That's
Um,
amazing.
and so then in about 15, I guess it was, he came to me and he said, are you still interested in being president? Because I have an opportunity to buy the company. And someday I would like you to take over as president. And so then in March of 19, that's when I took over. So I guess that's been 6.5 years now or so I've been the president. And
That's
I guess it all began because I walked in and put my name. And that day when I told him, hey, just so you know, one day I want to run the company, he kind of rolled his eyes and looked at me and said, hey, I've got every young guy in the company wanting to run it. And
right.
so, hey, if you want something, I guess you got to go for it.
Yeah, I mean, just you saying that you put in that report, you put your plans to transition into the president. I think that's another huge selling aspect. And I think again, it just shows a lot of people that if you really want something, don't be afraid to be bold and go after and try and get it, because you never know, you might actually go get it like you did. So that's an incredible story, man. I'm assuming you're probably good friends with the owner at this point now, given the long history and the amount of times you kind of boldly just put yourself out there. He's probably like, "Yep, well, I know Vince."
I don't, maybe friends is a strong word. I mean, I've worked for my career for 23 years now.
Hmm.
Um, Work is work and personal is
Of
personal.
course.
Mike's never been to my house. I've never been to Mike's house. I know where he lives, but I've never been over the threshold into his home.
Right.
Um, Maybe that's part of the our success with one another
Hmm.
is we have our work and then we go home to our families and do what we do, and then we come back to work.
Absolutely.
I know like, a lot of people feel differently about this. I've always kind of kept my work life and my family life.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean that I don't know about people at work and struggles they're going through and maybe some things about their family, kids and things they have. But that kind of where it ends.
Right.
Um, you have your personal life and I have mine, and that's worked for me because I come across to a lot of people as being the tough individual, but I got a pretty soft heart. And I've always struggled with if I'm with you on Sunday and out in your boat and we're fishing, and on Monday there's a problem at work,
Gotcha.
how am I going to deal with it?
Right. That's
So
good.
that's always worked for me.
And that's good. I think what you've pointed out here is a clear um, look into where you need to set, like how you realize how you operate and where you need to set boundaries for yourself. And I think that's an important note for a lot of people coming up. And we're kind of getting ahead, but just kind of like people who are trying to do something and are working in industry, like knowing like what are your strong suits, what are your weaknesses, like knowing your weaknesses just as much as your strong suits, because those are equally, if not more important than what your strong suits are, and will determine how successful you are as well. For
Yeah.
any listeners though who may not know Ajax, can you just give us a quick example or just a quick overview of kind of what the company does, communities you serve?
We're primarily an asphalt production and paving company. We have 8 asphalt plants in Florida. We serve from about Brooksville, which is up north of Tampa, down to Naples along the west coast, over into the center part of the state. We have an office over in Lake Wales, which is southwest of where you're at there.
Mm-hmm.
So we cover mainly the southwest coast of Florida. Ajax originated in Michigan in 1951 and came to Florida in 1981.
Oh,
And
wow. I didn't even know that.
Mike Horan, the one that came down and started the Florida operations in 81, and he's the one that now owns the company. When I came here in 2002, we had about 78 employees, and today I guess we're about 630 or so. So we've grown over the years. Some of that growth has been through acquisitions, and some of it just been by setting up other divisions in the company, like trucking that we didn't get to do that we now do a lot of. So
Okay.
that's kind of who we are.
I love that. So, I mean, I was going to touch into this too. I mean, you guys, as you said, employ over 600 people. Has What has been some of, like, I guess, the biggest wins or milestones you've seen underneath your leadership with, some of those people, with some of those, like, Florida's like biggest infrastructure projects? Like, what have been some of the biggest wins or milestones you've seen that have come out through those employees?
Uh, well, this goes back to when I was vice president of the company. In '07, we were awarded the largest contract that the state of Florida DOT had ever led at the time.
Wow.
I mean, they've led a lot now that trump that, but at the time it was the largest contract in their history they'd ever led. And we had a lot of employees that went down there and just really nailed that job, and that job carried us through the recession that followed in 10, 11, 12 in those years.
Mm-hmm.
And that job really changed the face of the company. It really set us up for who we are today. So, I mean, that was a big one. We've grown a lot, and most all of our leadership has come from within the company. It's been grown and tailored here, so they know our culture and values.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that says a lot about the company. There's room for internal growth and promotion. Most of our leadership in the company is probably in the 40 to 47-year-old range. So we're really set up good for the future. I'm the old guy in the company, and my days are numbered, but they're all ready to take over. And I mean, we have a lot of people that have been here a long time. I mean, we got employees 45 years, 30 years, 20 years. I mean, when people land here and if they make it through the first couple of years, they tend not to leave.
And that shows a good, again, good company culture with you guys. I am curious, has anyone slid in their reports their plan to take over your position as president? Has anyone done that to you yet?
He did. The owner's aware of it, and he will be.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was just, have you told the story to employees before?
About me going in and saying I want to be president.
Yeah.
Well, I've told it there, and I've given up more than 100 talks across the country on mental health
Okay.
and different things, and it's always, and most of those, it's a piece of it. So I think
Okay.
it's good for people to hear that.
I 100% agree. And I definitely want to touch on obviously your advocacy for that in a second. But infrastructure, and correct me if I'm wrong, but infrastructure, in my opinion, is often seen as a traditional industry. What has changed the most in your time at, like, the top of the industry?
What had changed at the top of the industry?
Hmm.
Um, I'm not sure. A lot has changed at the top of the industry. There's a lot of changes taking place with the boots on the ground in the industry, if you will, with technology.
Hmm.
I mean, we had the capabilities. We have one loader at an asphalt plant. We had the capabilities of someone to sit in a building in the air conditioning and drive that loader
Wow.
from, and not even be outside where it's at. I
Wow.
mean, so that's a big thing. We've got ability to build jobs now where we don't have to go out and set surveying, grade stakes all through there. They're actually built off of electronic and digital
Hmm.
plans. That's a big deal. Um, I mean, on the upper end, maybe we had just have more tools to manage people and do things.
Okay.
But I'm a firm believer that our company, our industry, I don't make any money for the company. The foreman and their reports, they're the only reason I'm sitting here talking to you today.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we don't continue to do things to make their jobs less complicated, if you will, more, I hate to hear people say that the younger generation are lazy people, because I don't think they are.
Mm-hmm.
I think the younger generation people are different than the people of my generation, and I'm different than the people of my father's generation. So every generation is different. And if you go back to Aristotle, a guy in Aberystwyth, Wales, did a
Mm-hmm.
talk on why people hate millennials. And he went all the way back to Aristotle, and every generation said the generation behind them were lazy, they were bums, they were losers, whatever terms they wanted to use.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the generation that's coming up are way smarter than the people of my generation. I mean, I got my first computer in my home when I was probably 27 years old, maybe.
Wow.
And now 4-year-olds are on computers, and heck, probably even 3-year-olds are on computers.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this generation is going to really transform how we do things. And I think that's great.
I think that's
But the people of my generation and the people a generation behind me, they got to look at that and reward it and accept it, and not say they're lazy because they don't want to do it the way I did it.
mm-hmm.
People of I used to brag that, God, I worked 70 hours this week. God, I worked 80 hours this week. That was a badge of honor.
Mm-hmm.
And now people want to be able to say, I did everything I needed to do this week, and it only took me 45 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And we call them lazy because it only took them 45 hours. They just did it smarter and a lot better than we did.
Right. Yeah. That's a great way to look at it, and I love hearing that too, because especially the smarter and better way as well, because a lot of these people, I think they're also realizing, like, while they find full fulfillment in their work, if they can do it in 45 hours and spend more time with their family, or enjoying life, whatever it may be, without sacrificing work, because they're still doing great work, it's like, why would we not want to encourage that at the end of the day as well? um
I've always said, as a leader, my goal is to be able to pay higher wages, allow people to work fewer hours, because, there's always this argument, hey, they live on 70 hours, and if you give them 45 hours, they can't afford to live. Okay, well, then let's pay them enough on 45 hours so they can afford to live, so they can
mhm.
have family time.
Yep.
So when they come back to work, they're actually motivated and want to work,
Mhm.
right?
I love that. And I think that's great that you're in a position of leadership and you have that mindset as well for it. I did want to touch on advocacy for you, because in addition to leading Ajax, you've been a public advocate for mental health awareness in construction. If you're okay with going into this, why has this been such an important cause for you?
A lot of people go through struggles, right? And I'll try to give you the brief version, not the 45-minute version. And I went through some struggles back in the late 80s and 90s. And what I'm getting ready to tell you, I'm not telling you the worst thing that's ever happened to anyone, because a lot of people have had things worse happen to themselves than I did. I just didn't deal with it. In May of 89, I learned my brother was terminally ill. In July of 89, my father passed. In November and December of 89, my wife and I lost twin sons we had. In July of 93, my brother passed. And in 97, my mother passed. So I never really talked to anyone about that. And I just had the struggles and a downward spiral in my life. And in 2007, about a half mile from where I'm sitting here right now, back behind our asphalt plant, one evening, I went there to kill myself. And someone called and stopped me, so I didn't. And for 14 years, I never talked about that with anyone. Um, Even my wife and I, after that night, she's the one that called and stopped me. ex-wife now, but my wife at the time. We never discussed it. And I decided in January of 21 to go back to the University of South Florida in Tampa and work on my doctorate degree because I wanted to research frontline leadership, how we take the great paver operator and suddenly the foreman quits and we say, hey, you're the new foreman. You know how to run equipment, so you must know how to manage people. And they fail. And I wanted to study what other industries had done to kind of bridge that gap to try to help our industry. And when I told a professor there in June of 21, that's what I'm going to research, he kind of looked at me and laughed and said, that's pretty weak. You ought to find something better. And so I thought about it for a couple of weeks. And in July, I approached him and said, what about suicide in the construction industry? And he asked me why. And I told him I'd done some research that when you combine mining and construction in the US, we're the highest industry sector when it comes to suicides. Construction by itself is number 2. A construction worker dies by suicide every 2 hours in America.
Wow.
We lose about, well, it's gone up now. I guess it's 13 to 18 a day to suicide. And we lose 2 to 3 to job-related fatality. So, I mean, we lose 5 times as many working to suicide as we do to construction-related injuries. And he told me that would be pretty powerful if you could do that. So that's what I did. And then for my thesis at the end, I actually wrote a book. The program I'm in, it allowed you to not just write a document that went on a dust and collected shelf or on a shelf and collected dust. And I asked the Florida Transportation Builders Association if I could come to their construction conference over in Orlando, and I did, and that would have been in February of 23, I guess. And I invited a bunch of executives from across the US, President of the American Road and Transportation Builders, Ward Nye, the president of Martin Marietta Aggregates, Jared Perdue, the secretary of the Florida Department of Transportation, some international and regional and national contractors, and we all signed a proclamation saying we would address mental health and suicide in our organizations. And after I did that, companies began to ask me, hey, would you come and talk at our annual meeting or come and talk at our safety day? And so I've now done that at 106 locations.
Wow.
I've done a couple TEDx talks. So between TEDx and the places I've been in front of about 2.3 million people. And I guess December will be 3 years or so when I started that. So, I mean, the passion came from, I had a personal story. I had researched it, and I had an opportunity to make a change at Ajax in our industry. And I just felt, I hate to say it this way, some level of obligation. I felt a calling. I felt I had a purpose. And fortunately, I worked for an owner that said, hey, this is important. Go do it. So he bought me a lot of airline tickets and hotel rooms and Uber rides and allowed me to travel across the country and through the Virgin Islands and different places and giving talks.
That is, well, so first of all, thank you for sharing not only your story, but just your experience and everything leading up to it. I think it's notably just an amazing cause to want to be a part of, let alone lead. I guess I'm curious, what's one thing you think leaders in any industry can do to create, I guess, a culture where employees feel safe and supported?
Be authentic, be yourself. You don't have to be the king. I got up this morning and I rode my bike trainer for a while, and then I went for a walk, and then I went in and took a shower, and I went to the garage and I put one boot on and then I put the other boot on just like everybody else and went to work today. And I know there was a time in my career when I used to think God, I could never hang around people like those leaders. I could never be in that group. And suddenly, when you realize most of those people are just like you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Probably maybe the best story I can tell you is I interviewed someone when I was doing my research. When actually it was someone that interviewed me for a podcast. And he told me, he said, you know, a while back I had a heart condition, and we didn't want the people in the company to know. In fact, we hid it from the people in the company because we didn't want them to know that the leader of the company was struggling. And he said, suddenly after talking to you, I realized that I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna share with them what I went through, because it's important that they know that I hurt like they do. I have issues like they do. I have worries like they do. And so that if you do that, your employees will be comfortable speaking with you. I mean, the Saturday before Labor Day, one of my employees called me at 7:42 in the evening and hysteria and crying. And for 10 minutes, I couldn't understand a word he was saying. And an hour and 10 minutes later, when we got off the phone, we were both laughing. And he said, I know we have tools and our employees sit in the program. I know we have mental health programs. And he said, but I don't want to talk to a stranger. And you've always treated me like a son. I wanted to talk to you because I knew you'd listen to me and take care of me. So, I mean, just be authentic and be a good person.
Mm-hmm. I want to say, Vince, that I am very excited you're on this episode just because I think there's a huge level of authenticity that definitely a lot of people will relate with, because it's easy, as you've said, like it's easy to look at the guys and women that are in leadership roles, high up roles. You know, they've spent their career getting there as well, but obviously someone coming into a company, they just know them as them. It's like kind of when you're a child, you just know your parents as being your parents. You know, you never knew they went through, you never thought they went through everything they did go through. And I feel like it's the same thing with new employees coming into, or even current employees coming into a position, seeing leadership and not realizing that that person is a person as well that has, you know, a story that has led up to that. And I think that I just think that you sharing all this is going to be great for people hearing it, because it's going to further emphasize and just remind them that, you know, whatever you want to do, you can get to that point. It's a process, whether it happens tomorrow, next week, 5 years, 10 years, it is a process. And eventually there'll be somebody else who comes in and looks at you and be like, man, that guy has probably been there for a long time, you know? So I just wanted to say again, thank you. I'm not even done with the podcast, but I just wanted to interrupt real quick to just say thanks for coming on, because I really think it's going to be a very powerful episode, and I'm sure people are gathering a lot from it already. Um, with going into, you know, just teams in itself and employees, you know, you guys are a company with over 600 employees, and I think it's very clear to a lot of people that you can't succeed without a strong team. Um, how do you think about building and leading people I guess at the scale that you guys are at, because you guys are very big? How do you go about building and leading people at that scale?
Well, we went through some years where we struggled because we grew so fast,
Mm-hmm.
and we put people in places where we needed them, maybe that they weren't fully qualified for, but we needed them. And they muddled through and they kind of made it. And then when we finally could get our feet back on the ground, we've now set up a kind of a training piece of the company. We've hired someone full-time to manage people, to help them with their careers. Whenever we hire employees, I mean, just starting a few months ago, we've made our orientations better. It
Mm-hmm.
used to just be a little short thing, and here's your hard hat and vest, go to work. We actually bring the employees now in, and I try to meet with them that day, but safety meets with them, and we meet with them. And then Actually, tomorrow, everyone that's been hired in the last 6 months and coming in to have a luncheon and spend 4 hours together. And I'm going to go in and give a 30-minute presentation on mental health and my story so that they'll better understand who I am and I mean, and how I made it through that. The one thing that I didn't say that I want everyone to hear is, I mean, the reason I got to where I got in '07 is because I was told as a kid, and I was told when I came into this industry, you're a man, suck it up, don't talk about your emotions, and don't talk about your feelings. That's what women do. Men don't do that. You got to be the man of the house. You got to be strong. I mean, I heard all of the things because that's the generation I grew up in. I think, well, I don't think, I know younger people now are more apt and they want to have those conversations.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so I mean, that, tomorrow it's going to be sharing with those people. When we go through the orientation, I give everyone my cell phone number and tell them, hey, phone's on 24/7, call me. I prefer you call your supervisor first and try to settle it at that level because nobody likes somebody going over their head. But
Mhm.
before you get frustrated and leave the company, I want you to call me to see if I can help you. And I mean, so that's kind of how we failed on the leadership level because we weren't ready for it. The growth came so quick, and now how we're addressing it and by getting people set up, going through training programs.
I love them, man. And just another aspect, I think you're an incredible human being. The topic on being a man and uh, not sharing your emotions is definitely one that hits hard with me because I've gone through my own stuff, and as I've grown up with tough parents and I had to figure out a lot of stuff on my own. So the aspect of being a man was something I had always struggled with until I started talking to someone and realizing I could, I don't have to condense everything in. So I think that's great that you're doing it for people, especially in obviously a way tougher industry than I'm in. I think they need it a lot, and you're just showing how amazing the company culture is, which is something from an outside perspective for myself, I would have never saw, because I without having this conversation with you. So just hearing it, it's just a breath of fresh air, knowing that these really tough industries, especially at Ajax, are taking the time to address these things because they matter at the end of the day, and your teams matter, your employees matter.
There's a lot of companies in this industry now where I've gone and given talks. I mean, CWR Contracting, they're over near you in your Orlando area and up through I mean, there are 100 locations across the US now. CW Matthews out of Atlanta, CR
Hmm.
Jackson of South Carolina. I mean, the names go on because what they've learned is that as tough as all these men are, once you tell them it's okay to talk, they suddenly want to talk.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Um, with going back into, like, I guess, workforce, the workforce challenges I feel like are huge in construction today. Um, what have been some of the toughest hiring or retention issues that Ajax has faced?
Well, you say the same thing that everybody says, and I guess it's true. We just haven't experienced it. Um,
Really?
and I mean, hey, I'm on the board of directors for the National Asphalt Paving Association, so I'm all across the country at conferences and things. And what you just said must be 100% true because everybody says it. We have just not had a difficult time hiring people
Hmm.
because the recruiters we use are our own employees,
Okay.
and they tend to bring their kids or their cousins or their neighbors in the door when we need people, which goes back to saying something about the culture, right? I mean,
Hmm.
I'm not going to tell you that we don't have turnover because we do at the lower end. There's a lot of churning, but I mean, we probably have more people now than we need
Right.
because we're bad at letting people go. But we've just not experienced it, but the industry as a whole has,
Hmm.
and I try to stay concerned about it because I keep hearing the numbers and You know, if you listen to Mike Rowe, the Dirty Job Guy podcast, he's big into workforce development and getting people into the trades.
Hmm.
I mean, we're getting ready to be at a shortage on plumbers and different things. So we need more people that want to go to trade schools
Hmm.
than we do people that want to go to college. I mean, I could do what I'm doing today without any degrees. I've
Right.
got a bachelor's, a master's, a doctorate, but the guy that's going to replace me, I think he has a bachelor's degree, maybe. Um, in our industry, to succeed, you just need to have the want. You need to have the ability to ask questions and be open-minded. And you can
Okay.
go to almost any level within the industry.
So I know you guys don't struggle with this challenge personally, and maybe you would have just already answered this with the trade school answer. But one of my questions was going to be on other industries. What do you feel like would be the biggest bottleneck as far as them building or maintaining teams that can grow with the demands of the projects? Would it be that that there's not enough people going to trade school that can go into it, or do you feel like it's something else?
The biggest bottleneck begins with high school guidance counselors and parents,
Mm.
because they all think that if your kid doesn't go to college, your kid's a failure. Well, I hate to tell you this, most plumbers are making 2 to 3 times as much as most college graduates.
Hmm.
Is it a glamorous job? I mean, I'm not here to sell the plumbing, but we've all got this image of what a plumber is, right? He's a guy
Right.
under your kitchen seat with a butt crack showing you. Well, in my experience, that's not what most plumbers are. Guidance counselors, I mean, we're trying to educate them. The industry is. I've gone to high schools and tried to educate them. We need to not be ashamed. Hey, I've got a daughter that's got a doctorate degree that's a nurse anesthetist. I'm very proud of her. I've got a son that's a journeyman electrician that works for Tico Electric in Tampa and works on power lines. I'm very proud of them. They both went 2 different paths. She found her path early. It took my son till the age of 31, 2 before he found the path where he was going to go. He worked at Ajax for 6 years, and they went into the Army for a few years, and so it took him a long time to figure out where he wanted to go. But they're both very happy. Um, he's building a good retirement fund right now as a tradesman with no college degree. So I'm proud of both of them, and I would stand at any cocktail reception or anywhere I was at. Not that I go to any cocktail reception. Um, I'm more comfortable out in the field than I am at a cocktail reception. But I'm proud of both of them. And parents need to be proud of their kids, the career path they take, as long as it's an honest career path and somehow helps society as a whole. And I think the other thing that probably some of the trade can do, and we're starting to see some of this happen, is help develop training programs.
Hmm.
Um, the Ford Asphalt Contractors right now is working kind of with the Florida Department of Transportation on some ideas of how we could set up some training. I've told them that, hey, I've got a vision that if we could build a trade school, so now a parent could say, hey, my son Johnny graduating, and he's going to go to the trade school because in 6 months, he's going to be a certified, whatever that is. Can be a certified asphalt plant operator. It can be a certified equipment roller.
Hmm.
Can be a certified engineering technician. Now suddenly parents can be proud that their kid is going to something and they're going to be a success in life. I mean, I had one of my young plant foremen in my office probably 2 years ago, and I said, "Tell me what you made when you started." And I don't remember that. Okay, I made $60,000. Okay, so year one, you made $60,000. In year one, a kid went to college and he didn't make 60,000. So you're already $120,000 ahead of him, right? Oh, and he also had to spend $20,000 that year to go to college. So now you're $140,000 ahead of him. So now after 4 years, you're six or $700,000 ahead of him.
Hmm.
And assuming you stay on your path and assuming you don't get any promotion, it's going to take that kid getting the engineering degree to the age of 54 before he comes back and your
Catch up.
paths cross.
Right.
And I said, that's assuming you don't try to do anything else with your career. And most people don't know that. And our industry has done a very poor job of letting people know that. And when I say our industry, I mean, I'm talking about the electricians, plumbers, contractors, anything that has to do with our infrastructure and has to do with how we live. I mean, nobody wants their kid to be a plumber or an electrician, but if you went and told them, hey, we're going to take all the plumbing and electrical out of your house, nobody would want any of that either, would they?
Yeah. That is
Um,
that yeah, I think that's a lot of great points. And that I think this aspect on college too is something that also hits with me because I personally I never went to college. I actually almost dropped out of high school initially before I got into business and trying to find like my path. And it was my mom who made me, yeah, I dropped I dropped out of junior year, and she kind of slapped me on the back of the neck and she said, "You're at least gonna," she's because my mom was a single mom. She had just gotten a divorce. She was a single mom. She came, we like, I was born in the US. We came back to the US, and she like was going to nursing school trying to get her finances together. And she says, I'm paying for, I like, she's like, I'm working this hard. You're at least going to get like your high school diploma. So I remember she like set me up with an online thing, and I got my high school diploma online, finished before my classmates. But then I decided to go into my own stuff. I never went to college, and it was always within that time frame of being 17 to about maybe like 21. It was always an awkward conversation to always tell even like peers, because everyone was in college. Everyone, when you're especially in high school too, like the guidance counselor comes in and they say who put in their college preps, or I forget what it's called because it's been so long ago, and every single student raised their hand except for me. So it was always like an embarrassing thing, and I was always embarrassed to tell people, yeah, I never went to this or I never went to this. And now I almost kind of wear it like a badge of honor in a sense, because I'm able to do what I'm doing now. But back then it's like I can see also how it can weigh on a kid. It can weigh on somebody too,
yeah.
thinking that they're not living up to their parents' expectations or society's expectations when it's so much more than that.
I sat on a scholarship panel probably 3 or 4 years ago, and they had their final candidates and they came in and was given their talk about they why they should win. And I read one lady's, they sent them to us in advance. And when I got there that day, I said, did you all read this young lady's paper? And they said, yeah, we did. And I said, did you have any concerns when you read the paper? And they said, well, I think I understand what you're saying, but what do you mean? And I said, this young girl's on the edge. She's talking about how she can't let her parents down. They were, she was going to be the first generation immigrant of their family in the US. Her mother, I think, worked at Walmart and her dad drove a bus, and they viewed themselves as failures, and they didn't want their daughter to be a failure. So she had to do something above and beyond what they did. And she talked about what it was done to her mentally and the struggle and how she was questioning if life was even worth living. And so, I mean, yeah, you just nailed the pressure that goes on them. And the fact that her parents felt like they were failures because of what they were doing.
Hmm.
I mean, I think all of us at the end of the day, if you sit in the mirror and if you can be honest with yourself, and if you can say, I'm happy doing what I'm doing fulfills my needs. I'm able to eat and take care of myself and support things if I want to, or not support things, whatever happy means to you.
Hmm.
And then the third thing I think that's important is, are you able to put away something so that someday you can retire?
Hmm.
And if you can do that, being a clerk at Walmart like her mother was, or driving a bus, there's no shame in that. To me, there shouldn't be any shame in that. I stand at the 7-Eleven down the corner and hold the door open every day for the immigrant workers that are coming in, getting gas for their lawnmower to go and mow grass. They're doing something contributing to our community that makes our community look better. And God, I hope they're proud of themselves as I am of them. Thankful for what they do.
Yeah, I 100% agree, man. I 100% agree. Moving on, because I could go on this topic forever. Just as we kind of like get near the end of the overall podcast, the challenge, or not necessarily challenges, more so like moving forward. But there is one thing I did want to touch on with challenge. If you had to name what you think is the single biggest challenge slowing growth in construction today, whether it's hiring, even though I know that's something you guys fortunately don't have to struggle with given your company culture, I think is clearly the reason, or training, or maybe industry-wide trends. What do you think is that biggest challenge kind of slowing the growth?
Well, the honest answer for what's slowing the growth right now is the downturn. If there is a downturn in the economy, I mean, the housing market in Florida has slowed somewhat, and so that drives a lot of things. There's a federal highway bill in Washington that's going to expire in September of 26. So if we don't get another bill put in, that'll slow down the highway industry because we won't be able to project and buy equipment, and which keeps the economy going. So I mean, those are funding issues. Personally, I think the future of the construction industry is bright because, like I said earlier, I'm excited about a lot of changes that younger people are going to bring in to the industry. So, I mean, other than funding from where I'm sitting, I think the future bright.
Love it. Love it. Looking ahead, what's your top priority for Ajax in the coming years?
Someone asked me a while back, why do you want to be president? And I said, well, that's easy to answer. I said, I wanted to be president because when I finished, I wanted the people in the company, particularly the blue collar level, to have their pay increased more than it was when I took over the position, which, I kind of told you earlier, my goal, and get wages up so they can work less hours and still do what they need to do. There's an old saying, you never wanted to be the guy that followed the guy. You didn't want to be the guy that followed Coach Bryant or Nick Saban, and you didn't want to be the guy to follow Mike Coran, because Mike Coran did phenomenal things for this company. And so I always viewed myself as, hey, I may not be the guy that everybody loves because I'm going to go in and shake some things up and get things changed. But I don't think I've lost too many people. Most of the people are happy with the changes I've made. So I hope I've set the company up to be as successful as it was after Mike Coran ran it for 38 years, and now I've run it for 6 years. And I hope when I'm gone that if I come back in 20 years later, the company's even better than where it was when I left it.
Love it. I think a lot of people too. You might even get more new workers just from this, because to be honest, man, like the way hearing it's such a refreshing ear to hear the way the company culture is set up underneath your leadership, and the stuff that you stand for, and the changes that you want to make. I think who would be upset with hearing that that you're an advocate for getting paid more while working less hours. I think that's also probably why you guys don't have a huge turnover issue in it, because employees know that there's good longevity, there's good leadership, and I think ultimately that comes down to it too, is with leaders running these teams, is your team is only as good as the leadership. And I think you're a prime example of just great leadership at hand.
Well, the best thing a leader can do, and I've grown to where I almost hate the word leadership because everybody talks about leadership anymore, is the easiest thing to do, whether you're leading or whatever you want to call it, is put a lot of people around you that are smarter than you are.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a lot of people that get into a role and surround themselves with people that I would say that aren't quite as smart as they are. And I've always taken pride in being able to say that I'm the dumbest guy in the room and look at all these bright people, because all those bright people make me look smart.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's true. So as we go to this last question, just to wrap up the entire podcast, because this has been a very, very great episode. For other executives, other people in leadership listening, what's one piece of advice you'd share about building a company that lasts?
be authentic and open with your employees and don't hide things from them.
Love it. Anything else you want to share? Any links you want me to include? I can throw in your LinkedIn link in the description of the podcast and everything. But anything you want to share? Any you want to say where people can find you?
Oh, they can go to LinkedIn if they want me. I mean, I don't do self-promote, but I mean, there's,
I'll, I'll
yeah.
I'll at the very least I'll put your LinkedIn in there just so people can know that, if they want to send you a message just to say hi or thank you for kind of what you're doing, and maybe even inquire about Ajax, they can. For everyone listening right now, how Vince and I actually connected was through LinkedIn. So he's a very reachable guy. So as I kind of close this out, one, Vince, I just want to say thank you for sharing your story, from everything from your experiences to your leadership journey at Ajax, to your advocacy for employee well-being. I think this conversation is definitely going to really highlight how critical people are to building not just infrastructure, but also a strong and lasting organization. So thank you again for joining us. For everybody listening, you can subscribe to the podcast if you want to check out Vince. Like I said, I'll put his LinkedIn in the description. But until then, we will catch you guys next time.